Hello everyone, my name is David. Today we are going to take a look at another real story with you. A mother and father had a young son, and that young son passed away. Now, the elderly parents have to live the rest of their lives without him, not just with his memories, but they wanted to spend their lives with something that belonged to him, something that reminded them of him. This story is heartbreaking. It brings tears. It causes pain, yet it also inspires. It shows that even in moments filled with sorrow and unbearable grief, a person still finds a way, a reason to keep going. This is the story of a family from Delhi, a very loving family with a mother, father, and 3 children, 2 daughters and 1 son. The head of the family, Gurvinder Singh, was an engineer who had retired from his post. His wife, Havar Kaur, and their 2 daughters and 1 son made up their happy home. The son's name was Preet Inder Singh. This happened in 2020. Preet Inder Singh was around 30 years old at the time. After completing his studies, he was working hard, fighting for his job and building his future. But fate had other plans. One day, he suddenly fell ill. When he was taken to the hospital, they discovered he had a strange illness. It was blood cancer. The family took him to Sir Ganga Ram Hospital, a well-known hospital in Delhi. After the doctors examined him, they confirmed the diagnosis. The treatment would involve chemotherapy and other procedures, but the disease was dangerous, and the chances of survival were very low. 30-year-old Preet Inder was still unmarried. He was single and had just begun his life. The family had even started looking for a girl for him. But then, this illness struck. He was undergoing treatment at Ganga Ram Hospital. Since the situation was clear and the seriousness of the disease was known, the doctors had informed the family that the chances of survival were very low. They found out about the illness on June 22nd, 2020. Then came the date, June 27th, 2020. On that day, Preet Inder Singh and his parents made a decision. They decided that Preet Inder Singh's sperm, his semen, would be properly frozen and safely preserved in one place. The purpose was that if, in the future, Preet Inder were to pass away, which was almost certain then, through that sperm, a child could be born. In that child's face, Preet Inder's elderly parents could see their son again and find a way to live their remaining years, to cope with their old age. On June 27th, his sperm was officially frozen and stored at the hospital. Proper paperwork was signed, which included Preet Inder Singh's own signature, as well as that of his father, Gurvinder Singh. To ensure the sperm remained safe and didn't get damaged, it had to be properly frozen and preserved, and there was a cost for that, a storage fee, which the father had to pay. The doctors chose to do this on June 27th because chemotherapy was about to start right after that. They knew that if the sperm were collected after chemo had begun, its quality wouldn't be good due to the effects of the drugs and medications. So, 5 days before starting chemotherapy, Preet Inder's sperm was collected and safely frozen at the hospital. This happened in June, on June 27th. Treatment continued through July and August. But in the first week of September, Preet Inder passed away. The death of their young son shattered the parents and the entire family. Even though they had known for the past 2 or 3 months what was likely to happen, they still held on to a hope for a miracle, that maybe their only son would survive. But that didn't happen. Preet Inder passed away. After his death, the family spent a few days in shock and grief. Then one day, the mother and father, Havar Kaur and Gurvinder Singh, went to the hospital and said, "The sperm of our son that we had frozen and stored here, please give it back to us." They said, "Please give it to us so we can use that sperm for surrogacy. We will find a surrogate, someone who can carry the child. Through surrogacy, a baby will be born." They explained that they had 2 daughters, and Preet Inder loved both of his sisters deeply. They said they had even found a surrogate within their own family, and they wanted to use their son's sperm to conceive a child. But as soon as they mentioned this, the hospital refused to release the sperm, the very same sperm that had been stored there 3 months earlier, with the full consent of both parents and their son. According to Indian laws and certain regulations, the hospital said, "We cannot give it to you." So the parents asked, "Then who can you give it to?" They replied, "We can only release preserved sperm to either the husband or the wife. If neither the husband nor the wife is present, then we cannot give it to anyone else. The law says this because otherwise it can be misused in many ways." The grieving parents pleaded, saying, "We've lost our young son. This is our only hope. Through our son's sperm, if a child, a boy or a girl, is born into this world, we will see our son in that child. We will search for him in that child." They said, "We will spend our old age with that child. And if both of us pass away, then our 2 daughters are also ready to give it in writing that they will take full responsibility for raising the child. So please give it to us." But the hospital authorities refused, once again citing the law. Now the parents' dream was shattered. They had already lost their young son, and the hope of seeing a part of him come back into their lives through that child, that dream too, was taken away by the hospital. What could they do now? That's when some people advised them to go to court. Because they had a legal right to it, and parents could still claim the sperm, the parents finally hired a lawyer and took the matter to court. They filed a special petition in the Delhi High Court, explaining their entire story, how their son's sperm had been preserved, and how the hospital was now refusing to release it. This happened in 2020, and once the case reached the court, a long legal battle began. It was the first case of its kind in the country, because usually in surrogacy or in cases where sperm is used to conceive a child this way, it's done by couples. And such cases involving parents trying to use their deceased son's sperm were rare, even around the world. Couples who are unable to have children often use IVF or other modern technologies to become parents. So far, courts had mostly seen cases involving husbands and wives, but now the court was faced with a unique case. A son's sperm was stored in a hospital, and the hospital was refusing to release it. The parents wanted that sperm so they could carry on their family legacy. They hoped to see a glimpse of their son again in the form of a child born from that sperm, but the hospital was denying them that right. Even the court was initially unsure how to handle such a case. Anyway, the court accepted the case, sent notices to both parties, and asked for their responses. The legal proceedings continued inside the courtroom, with many arguments and debates taking place. Eventually, the court began considering how and why a decision should be made. A simple yet powerful point was raised under the Hindu Succession Act in India. Parents have the right to continue their lineage and legacy. If they wish to do so, the law cannot stand in their way, because the law itself grants them that right. The only complication was that their son did not have a wife. The question was, if the parents want it, how can it be given to them? In India, when it comes to laws around sperm, reproduction, or having children through methods like IVF or sperm donation, most of these laws are designed for couples, people who cannot become parents naturally. In such cases, they turn to surrogacy, IVF, or other technologies to become parents. But in this case, it was the parents who, in a way, would now become grandparents, because any child born from their son's sperm would be their grandchild. In other words, they would be the grandparents. In court, there was also a debate around India's culture, how in Indian society grandparents play a major role in raising children. And this isn't something new. When both parents are working, grandparents who are often retired and at home take care of the children. In many cases, children even receive more love from their grandparents than from their parents, and they often form deeper bonds with their grandparents or maternal grandparents. All of these arguments were being presented, and the court was listening carefully. Then the question came up, has anything like this ever happened before? All the lawyers were presenting their arguments, questioning whether there had ever been a case where sperm was handed over to the parents, especially when the son was unmarried. Some such cases were presented in court, a few from India and some from other countries. One case was from Pune in 2018. A 48-year-old woman had a 27-year-old son who was diagnosed with brain cancer and died in Germany. After his death, the mother collected his sperm and chose to become the surrogate herself. She carried her son's child in her own womb and gave birth to twins. The law and the courts there allowed it, so it wasn't entirely unheard of. After her son's death, she took his sperm, conceived, and gave birth to twins. There was also a case in the Supreme Court of New York involving a young Army cadet who died in a road accident. After his death, his parents went to court and requested access to their son's sperm so they could carry on his legacy and keep a part of him alive with them. The court in New York officially granted permission for it. The third case was from Israel during the war in Gaza. A 19-year-old Israeli soldier died in the conflict. His mother requested her son's semen so she could have a child from it to see her son's reflection in that child. She was granted full legal rights to do so. After that, Israel introduced supportive laws for similar cases, especially for soldiers who die young in service. So then the question arose, if this is possible in other countries, why not in India? It was discovered that unlike those countries, India still doesn't have a clear or unified legal stance on giving a deceased son's sperm to parents neither in the constitution nor in any specific law. It's seen as unusual or unfamiliar in Indian legal and cultural contexts. In contrast, countries like the United States, the United Kingdom, and Japan legally allow the use of a deceased person's sperm for posthumous reproduction. It is considered a legal right there. Australia also allows it, but with one restriction: if someone dies and their semen is to be used to conceive a child, certain legal conditions must be met first. So, at the very least, they suggest giving a 1-year period to grieve the death. Once that 1-year period is over, if you still decide to go ahead with it, then you are allowed to proceed. This is known as a lock period of 1 year. Apart from that, there are countries like Italy, Sweden, Switzerland, France, Malaysia, Pakistan, Hungary, and Slovenia where there is a strict ban: if someone dies, their sperm cannot be used to create a child, whether by the parents, the spouse, or anyone else. Even if the sperm was preserved while the person was alive, it cannot legally be used after their death. Then there are countries like Sri Lanka, Nepal, Bhutan, and Bangladesh, where there is no law at all on this matter. These countries have never even considered making laws for such situations, so there's simply no legal framework. In India, too, there is no clear law about whether a deceased person's sperm can be used to impregnate someone and have a child. This created a legal complication in front of the High Court because there are no direct laws or guidelines on what should be done in such cases. That's why the situation became difficult. However, during the course of this legal case, 2 strong international examples were presented to the court to support the parents' plea. One example was from Israel and the other was from Ukraine, where a war has been going on with Russia. Many young soldiers have died and a large number of their parents came forward to request the use of their son's sperm to carry on their family legacy. In fact, in Ukraine, the government even made this process free, no cost at all to the families. The government would bear all the expenses. All these examples and arguments were presented in court. But on the other side, hospital presented its legal argument, especially referring to Indian law and government guidelines. They pointed to what the government of India says, and multiple points were raised. The first key point was, in India, according to both the hospital and the Indian government's stance, there is no clear law, rule, or directive that allows the release of sperm to anyone other than a wife. There are no legal provisions or defined guidelines that permit sperm to be given to parents or anyone else. In fact, the law in India even prohibits unmarried individuals, those who are not legally married, from using or donating sperm. So even if someone has a girlfriend or boyfriend, the law does not allow it. if they were already engaged but not yet married. Even in such a situation, if she wanted to become a mother using his sperm, the law does not allow it. So, in simple terms, India's law clearly states that only a legally married spouse is allowed to use the sperm. Only the wife has the legal right to use it. No one else, not even the parents. That's far beyond what the law permits. And if the person is unmarried, then no one, absolutely no one, can use it. This law applies to wives specifically so that legal heirs can be produced to carry forward the family legacy. But if there is no wife and the man was unmarried, then there's no legal provision that allows the legacy or lineage to be continued through his sperm. That was the first argument presented. The second argument was that India's surrogacy law applies only to couples who are unable to have children and want to experience the joy of parenthood. That's why IVF and surrogacy are allowed under special legal permission specifically for such parents. Additionally, they argued that under India's Assisted Reproductive Technology (ART) Act, no unmarried person or their girlfriend can use or access the sperm. The law prohibits the release of sperm to parents or anyone outside of the legal husband-wife relationship. After presenting all these arguments, the most important and crucial point came next. The key question was this: did Preet Inder clearly state before his death that his sperm could be used by his parents to continue his legacy? Hospital argued that he did not, and therefore they could not hand over the sperm to his parents, as it wasn't intended for that use. However, this argument from the hospital weakened when the parents' lawyer presented a very strong counter-argument. The first point raised was that when Preet Inder donated his sperm on June 27, 2020, a form was filled out. That form had two signatures, one from Preet Inder himself and the other from his father, Gurvinder Singh. The form also included two phone numbers, one for Preet Inder and one for his father. This indicated that both were fully aware and in agreement. The second argument was that Preet Inder knew he would not survive, so he didn't donate his sperm without reason. He did it with the specific intention that through surrogacy, his parents might be able to see a glimpse of him again, in the form of a child. The third point raised was that after the sperm was preserved, a storage fee had to be paid to keep it at the hospital under specific scientific and temperature-controlled conditions. Even after Preet Inder's death for 4 years, until the court gave its verdict, his father, Gurvinder Singh, continuously paid that fee. If he was paying to preserve it, it clearly meant they had a legal right or ownership over it. These were powerful arguments that significantly strengthened the parents' case. If there were concerns that the sperm might be misused, like for unethical purposes, or to create an heir that could cause disputes within the family, or if it was being treated like a business, having a child and giving it away to someone else, then such concerns were addressed. A formal application was submitted on behalf of the entire family, including Harvar Kaur and Gurvinder Singh, who are around 65 and 60 years old, respectively. They said, "We don't know how many more years we will live, but our 2 daughters are young. They deeply loved their brother, and we as parents loved our son immensely." The daughters added, "If even a part of our brother, a small part of him, can come into our home and carry forward his legacy, we are willing to do anything for that." They further stated, "If anything happens to our elderly parents, we are ready to give it to you in writing that we will take full responsibility for the child. If you need any proof about how the expenses will be handled, we are ready to provide everything. We only want a chance to bring a part of our brother back into our lives." When these arguments were presented, especially the intention to carry forward the family legacy, and then the Hindu Succession Act was cited, which gives legal rights to parents to continue their family line, all of this strengthened their case before the court. Then the court concluded the entire debate and stated that there are 3 important points which make it clear that this case should not be dismissed. First, When Preet Inder filled out the form, he knew exactly why he was donating his semen. It was not done unknowingly or by accident. Second, Preet Inder had no girlfriend, nor was he engaged to anyone. If he had a girlfriend or a fiancé who recognized him as her husband, then legally she might have had the right to claim the sperm. In such a case, the court could have considered giving it to her. The signed form, the 2 mobile numbers, the sperm preservation fees paid for years, and above all, the pure intention behind this, that through this child, in their old age, they could see their son, Preet Inder, again, in the face of that child. All of this reflects a deeply human side to the case. And legally, the court noted that there is no risk of misuse here. The entire family has already been broken by the loss of their young son. Therefore, the court ruled that the authorities at Sir Ganga Ram Hospital must hand over Preet Inder's sperm in proper condition so that it can be used to give life to a new child. It is now up to the parents to use it through surrogacy, IVF, or whichever method they choose. They also submitted in writing that a female relative in the family has agreed to become the surrogate. So the court issued its order. After fighting for 4 long years, Harvar Kaur and her husband Gurvinder Singh finally won. With tears in her eyes, Harvar Kaur said, "Everything in our life had fallen apart. There was only darkness left. But this small decision by the court has filled our lives with hope. It feels like maybe soon our son will be back in our arms again, in the form of a son or daughter." Her husband added, "I prayed my whole life for my child, but maybe God was harsh this time. He did not accept our prayers and took our young son away from us. But now, through another path, he has shown his mercy. And now, through this new life in the form of a son or daughter, our child will return to our home. And once again, happiness will dance in their home. Both parents are filled with joy, and they are now actively in contact with those who will help bring Preet Inder back in a new form, with a new name, born again, into the same home. If only those people could spend one moment with this family, meet Harvar Kaur, speak with Gurvinder Singh, or just listen to Preet Inder's story. Walk through their home once. I believe maybe even their hearts would soften. Maybe they would rediscover love for humanity. Stories like this truly inspire us in life. They remind us that life doesn't end with loss. There is still so much left to live for. Salute to these parents, and may the Almighty grant peace to Preet Inder's soul. So, this was today's story. Thank you for joining us on this journey today. We hope you enjoyed the content and found it valuable.